12:30 on the dot. Channel 17, please go ahead, start recording.
Welcome to TMAC on this beautiful September day. Well, I'm finally going into fall. My name is Beth Province. I'm TMAC chair, and we'll start introductions. Judy, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, I am Judy Johnson, admin assistant for Provo City Engineering here in Public Works.
I'm just Andy with Provo Public Works.
Hello, Gordon, PMAC member.
Lehigh City.
Chris Jensen, TMAC, Planning Commission.
Lisa K, Council.
David Hurtado, TMAC.
Ron Giesler, Provo City Engineering.
Hey, Hannah Schuler, Provo City Engineering.
And then online we have Dave Keller and Kendall. Got your last name, Kendall. What was your last name again? Thurston. Thank you. Thank you guys all for coming today. Our first item is to approve the minutes from August 21st. We have someone who would like to approve those minutes.
I wasn't here, so.
I wasn't either.
Yeah,
Make a motion
Got
to
one,
approve the minutes.
People approving it.
excellent. Thank you. I will second that motion.
I read them and they were amazing. Very informative.
Judy takes wonderful notes. We love it.
Try.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Who was the second on that one?
I would.
You were, thanks, Beth.
Okay. And now I'm just gonna get right to it. Hopefully this will be one of our last discussions on micromobility. Last time, Vern asked us to go ahead and submit any proposals we might have for the city, about updating the Provo City Code for micromobility. I think, how many did we get?
One from Beth.
And I really want to open this to discussion. Beforehand, Dave made a really good point about defining micromobility. So I think before we continue, we have state code on the definition of micromobility. And they brought up there's a lot of conveyances that it's how you look at it. Like they find it either by motor size, licensed or registered or unregistered.
License required and not required.
License required, not required. So there's a lot of different, how do we define this? I don't want to go against Utah state code. In my mind, micromobility is you put it so much better than I did. It's something that doesn't require a license, but
Registration or insurance, but is motorized. I mean, I think because there already are, anything that requires a license, registration, or insurance is already in the code for the state. And I think there's general consensus about where it belongs and who can use it. It's the gray area stuff that I think there are definitely, because there's always new vehicles. There's so many new things coming out with different arrangements of wheels and motors and things. There are some gray areas. I think there is some low-hanging fruit for enforcement, but that's, I guess, maybe not our purview anyway.
Officer Bruff said he was going to be here. I met with him yesterday. He was going to try to be here, but calls up there, you know, that takes priority and precedence. I'm really glad David is here, this meeting, because, you know, it's his business to know this stuff because of the world he is in, and he has a wealth of information. So I think we can have a really good, healthy discussion and be a little informed at the same time.
I missed it last time.
I know that I've seen so many near accidents. It's more than I can even count. Like, it happens all the time. And you mentioned that we could make it such that bikes had to stop at stop signs. I know that I found Hit to Drive constantly. I don't know if you've seen that. Like, they go too fast, and these little old ladies, people, they don't see. I mean, they see so many close accidents that, like, ah! I don't know, I'm just scared of something major happening and us not doing something until someone's dead.
So, under the purview of what licensed, unlicensed, and everything, what I would like to define micromobility as, at least how I view it, not define it, how I view it is anything that has a assist, because I know there's a difference between motorized and electric, and I don't see the difference.
There is.
Oh, does it say motorized?
I believe that
People think there's a
people
difference.
think there's a difference, but
There's not.
I think it's still motorized. It's a different form of motor, but it does the same function.
So
Moves the vehicle down the road. So
thank you for that clarification.
I would have to dig into the code to try to find, but as far as like, so what I sell technically, as the law defines it, is either a motorcycle or a motor-driven cycle, which is a subclass of motorcycle. So if you dig into the state code, even though I call them scooters, the state doesn't care for that term and legally doesn't distinguish between a Vespa and a Harley. Other than if it's under 150 cc's, then it's a subset called a motor-driven cycle. But I totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I got off on a tangent. What were you saying before
How to define micromobility as anything with
electrical and motorized? That's what it was. So what I was going to say is, when defining motorcycles in the state code, the state code doesn't care if it's powered by electricity or gas. That's right.
Okay. So if we agree on this, micromobility would be something that is motor assisted. Like you said, in that gray area that's below motorcycle and below vehicle level, above human.
I feel like electric motorcycles are more dangerous in a pedestrian scale world than electric bicycles are. Is that just the way I use my e-bike, or do you feel like there is a difference in users? Like, I feel like there's a little bit more recklessness in the motorcycle users than somebody who's pedaling to engage that electricity.
I mean, I think that recklessness is a factor, but
Or who's driving it, not
it has more to do with who's driving it. And I
Right.
think that when you have a vehicle that that appeals to underage, non-driver's license age teenage boys, then you're going to encourage reckless use of that vehicle. and a lot of those electric motorcycles, there's all kinds of different electric motorcycles too, but a lot of them are essentially a dirt bike that is being used on the street. And so I think that's an issue. And I think definitely they're more dangerous than e-bikes because they're so much more powerful and they go so much faster. So, I mean, e-bikes are very narrowly defined, and e-bikes are exempt from registration and licensing requirements. I believe there is an age requirement for e-bikes though.
And so it depends, because there's 3 levels. There's
Class 1, Class
1,
2,
2,
Class
and 3.
E-bikes, though, the main thing I see is them going really fast and people not seeing them as they're turning out. And then going really fast on the trails and freaking out.
Oh, yeah.
walkers and
It's
Well, any
really,
e-bike
it's,
that-
it's hard to be a e-bike driver and drive safely on trails because there's so many people and they're too powerful.
The speed limits on e-bikes are pretty generous for traveling the same lane as a pedestrian. But if you see an e-bike that the operator is not pedaling going over 20, it is not an e-bike that's legal. If they're going over 28 while pedaling, also not a class 3.
That's a class 3.
Well, if it's over 28, class
Really?
3 is limited at 28. So if it goes over 28 while they're pedaling, and you know, Chris can tell us that bicyclists can ride faster than 28 miles per hour without a motor. But it's all about prudence. But if you have, you know, 28 is pretty fast on the river trail. That's why we have a speed limit there.
Even 15 fast on the river trail
Yeah,
when there's
15,
people
you know,
around.
closing on a pedestrian or like a 2-year-old that's off leash, dangerous.
So for purpose of this discussion, I'd like to put it in the purview of any, I'm just gonna say conveyance, because that kind of covers a very broad category. Anything that is motor assisted. Now, I
And
know-
not licensed.
So not licensed doesn't necessarily have to be registered.
Yeah, so anything that isn't already,
Is if they're licensed and
Falling
registered,
into
they
the
have.
category.
They already have rules that
Licensed,
they've been
registered,
subject to,
insurance.
right?
So,
I can agree with that.
so going forward on those parameters, Utah State Code is a ban of use of those 8 and under, and parental supervision 14 and under.
15 and under, or?
No, my proposal is 15 and under.
Oh, okay.
how does it define parental supervision? Direct line of sight or mom?
That is a very, very good question. They do not define parental supervision.
Back in around 2004, there was all of a sudden, I had like 4 different people selling me stand-up electric scooters. They were at the time, they were more toy-oriented for children. They weren't like the ones that you can rent around the city. But they became huge. And in a very short time, Orem and Provo both had an ordinance, and they publicized it heavily in the news that said anybody under age, I think he was 16, had to have direct line of sight adult supervision. I don't know what happened to that rule. I think when they started renting the scooters around cities, I think they kind of forgot about that.
Well, technically, it's still on state code. It's supposed to be parental supervision.
But it was a city, I remember it was Provo and Orem city ordinance that they, because we were selling those and all this, like, we couldn't get enough of them to sell, and then the bottom fell out when they announced that they were requiring line of sight adult supervision.
So my contention of why ban it 15 and under, even though state code says parental supervision, is the fact that if you take parental supervision as being able to intervene in a dangerous situation, not possible. If these things are going 20 miles an hour down the road, no parent is able to intervene with their child to stop them in a dangerous situation. Because even if they were on a scooter themselves right next to them, they could potentially cause an even greater harm if they tried to intervene with their child while still trying to control their own conveyance.
So if you were to, change this and standardize it in Provo's code, how would you deal with the outcry of people who have purchased these so that their kids can get to practice or whatever, that have been using it that way for several years now and be up in arms that their daycare plan has just been thwarted?
So we're not banning bicycles. We're not banning.
No, I'm saying specifically, like, if this e-conveyance was somebody's idea of how they were gonna get their child from point A to point B on a regular basis, how do we, if we made a change to that, how would we introduce that in a way that's not going to, that's going to be minimally upsetting? Because I agree that it's a problem. I'm not trying to say we
Yeah.
shouldn't do it.
No,
We
but
just have to
no.
look at the reception side of it, and it's not gonna be pretty.
I understand that it will not be pretty, because I know lots of people who have bought electric scooters, electric for their kids.
So let's ask the question, just to focus a little bit.
Yeah.
Is your proposal to ban them on sidewalks, on the street, in the bike lanes, in the travel lanes? What infrastructure do you want to remove them from?
So
First, you're saying all users under age 15.
yeah, all users under age 15 and all city sidewalks. That electric conveyances should not be on city sidewalks.
Okay.
So
What is the rule now on city sidewalks? I thought that they had to be under
Under a certain
10,
speed.
it's like 10 miles an hour or 15.
yeah, it has to be under 10 on the city sidewalk.
Which I agree with because it's dangerous, but also I just rode a city sidewalk to get here because the alternative was life threatening.
And that's where we would.
Over the railroad track.
Oh, okay.
Like, I'm going to ride on that sidewalk, I'm not going to ride on the road. And so essentially, whether I was going 10 miles an hour or not, I was breaking the law if this was.
And 90 was made to have them on the.
So if there's already a rule or a speed limit, and, I guess my question is, would we agree that if the speed limit were adhered to or enforced, that be enough? Because if we say that it's not enough and we need to have a ban, then we fall into the same limitation, which is enforcement. It's not being enforced now. Will law enforcement have the resources and the interest to enforce a ban?
In my purview, it might be easier for them to enforce if there's an outright ban, because instead of trying to clock someone's speed going
True.
down a sidewalk, you're just not allowed on the sidewalk.
And I think that that would also make them feel, the operators of those vehicles would probably feel a little bit less like they're gonna get away with it. They know that just being on this vehicle on the sidewalk is against the law. But at the end of the day, I guess my question is, and I don't know the answer, I don't have an opinion on this, but my question is, we need more rules if the rules that are already in place aren't working, or can't be enforced to make them work.
Well, and that's why I think the ban is actually a little bit easier parameters to go around. Like I said, they can't be sitting there on the sidewalk with a speed gun clocking everybody on an e-bike or something going by. But if they see somebody on an e-bike going down the sidewalk, or an electric scooter, or a one-wheel, or whatever their motorized vehicle they're going down the sidewalk, if they're on the sidewalk, it's like, hey, no, you need to be off the sidewalk. This is creating a dangerous situation, please move over. And this goes to the infrastructure of the city also.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we may inadvertently put people in danger because then they'll go on the road and that would be even worse.
So there's consequences to any type of legislation that the council decides to go with. It just depends on, it's not depending, it's weighing the consequences on either side and what I think is best for the city as a whole.
I would propose that if we did number one, that would take care of number two. People will still go on the sidewalk, but there won't be as much recklessness because
That was also actually one of my contentions
some of
for
the
number
younger
one.
ones are out.
Obviously this is a concern because of the number, speed, how they're being operated, but is this an issue just for motorized then? Or, was this not an issue back when it was just bicycles? Is it because there's a proliferation of just so many more? Our Razor scooters, kids on Razor scooters probably aren't going over 10 miles an hour just because they're not able to go that fast.
So-
Bicycles, they could,
Yeah,
potentially.
but isn't that why we try to put bike lanes in cities though, is to get them off the street, off the sidewalk? What's the purpose of bike lanes in the city if they're allowed to go on the sidewalk? So,
You're suggesting a ban on all bicycles off
No, no,
sidewalks?
no, no.
Because then you're back to the same issue in some areas.
It's dangerous.
You
I
can't-
mean, it would be nice because it might force them to use the great throughways that we have on 200 East and 800 East and 3rd West or
yeah.
First West. But once again, that's education, and when the population turns over every 4 months almost, it's a constant job to educate people on the rules that are unique to Provo. Even though they might be important and because they're unique,
So I'm talking mainly motorized, not bicycles or scooters or anything like that, mainly motorized at this time. We may never revisit that for bicycles because, like they said, they're human powered. I feel like the human powered has a little bit more, you can't sustain 15 miles an hour on a bicycle unless, Tour de France level. I'm not. 15, if I get to 50 miles an hour, I'd be happy. But a motorized vehicle can sustain that.
Is arm billing, I'm guessing we're not isolated. We have somewhat unique because of BYU and everything, but dealing with the same issues? Have we heard anything, or Salt Lake or other
So there
metropolitan areas?
was a 13-year-old boy killed in Farmington on a electric bike. Now, it was a couple weeks ago.
You should get the local laws of the surrounding cities.
So it's become, we had a letter sent in to the city. I don't know if you got that one. It was shown to me that there was a older couple walking along Canyon Road, who complained about kids in the golf cart, kids on the motorized thing, just zipping past them, not telling them that they're there. You know, if they, older couple saying, if they knock me over, could break a hip. So there are complaints about it.
We get regular complaints.
So those are the specific examples that I know of. I'm sure you guys get more regular complaints than that.
Like, I think where we're having a hard time is not in what we agree or is a problem. Because I think all of us agree, and we probably pretty much are on the same page about what constitutes dangerous safe behavior. I think what's hard is that it's very difficult to write a ban that you can't think of a problem with. Like, I agree with number one. I think that's, as I understand it, is a good idea. But does that mean that 3-year-old in her Barbie Power Wheel that goes 2.5 miles an hour is going to go to jail? Or if she's on the sidewalk and mom's walking with her stroller? Like,
Honestly, it's not something I had thought of.
there's just, I think that it's very problematic. We're trying to get on the same page about terms and not really about what's dangerous. We agree what's dangerous. So what can we do about it? I don't know. I like all of these suggestions.
I was going to say we're open to other suggestions if people have other suggestions on, because it seems to be a growing problem, and it's not a problem that's going to go away. Because people are still buying, like Catrice was saying earlier, people are still buying these things for their kids, and it's just a growing, warmer problem. Like they, confiscated 3 of them.
Well, and speaking of those 3, that particular type of vehicle, I don't know what we all can agree to call it. I call them electric dirt bikes. But there is actually in the state code as of last year, they specified a specific paragraph of language that has to be, anybody selling those bikes has to put this paragraph where it can be seen in the store, and if it's in an online listing, it has to have this paragraph of language. No one does it. I mean, I've never seen anybody in any ad say this, and it's a paragraph that says this is not a street legal vehicle. You can't ride it in the street. Of course, the sellers have no interest in making sure their customers know this, because they know that the customers buying them are coming in for their 14-year-old kid who's all of his friends have them. And because the way the law is written, there's no way to enforce it unless someone files a consumer complaint with the state of Utah and runs that up the flagpole, and then it'll go against the dealer that sold it. So enforcement's not even in the right place, but the state has already recognized that those vehicles need more enforcement regulation. So I don't know, I feel like we're kind of doing the same thing here as doing there. We're going to come up with a neat paragraph that no one's going to pay attention to. And I wonder if instead of enforcement, which our law enforcement doesn't have the resources or time to do anyway, if instead we could, I don't know if the city has resources for this either, but somebody that's on social media 24/7 talking about this issue and explaining to parents what is and what isn't okay, because parents can enforce their kids. Police don't have the resources to do it.
Well, and I understand that, and we talked a lot about education and getting education out to the public so that they understand, doing the flyer that the police see all the time, getting that out to the public and saying, hey, this is the categories, this is where it can go, this is where it can't go, and getting that education out. To me, this is actually an easier version for police officers to be able to enforce, because it's not a speed limit, it's not a maybe you can be here, maybe you can't, it's not anything like that. And this actually gives them the opportunity that if they see somebody on the sidewalk on a motorized vehicle, they can stop them and say, hey, did you know, recently, this is the new ordinance in Provo, so if you could just move to the street, that would be wonderful. Because like you said, social media blast, the neighborhood pages, getting that information out, it doesn't seem to reach a lot of Provo, unfortunately.
What if we did an education campaign at each of the back to school nights or our teacher conference, where as you come in the main door of the school, there's a big sign that says, parents, this is the law for bikes and scooters in Provo, something like that, that was just very succinct and was in the place where the majority of the violators will be. Because I truly believe that more than 50% of the violations are ignorant. Some of them are willfully doing whatever I dang well please, but most of them are just, I have no idea that's even a rule. There's still people who don't know you can run stop signs on a bike. I love the fact that I love the idea that e-vehicles should have to, because otherwise they're running them at a very high speed.
Yeah.
Yes,
And that-
I almost hit one the other day, actually.
Yeah.
That's what happened to those two brothers that was on the, electric scooter, right? They thought they were under the same law as a bicycle, where they could just go through the stop sign. Now, even the law says if there's a vehicle present, you gotta stop.
You have to
No
look.
one is stopping.
But they did not stop, even though the vehicle was present, and then they were hit. So ignorance is a lot of that. Our resource officers, and you could ask Sergeant Bruff, but our resource officers in all the schools, we have a resource officer in every elementary, middle, and high school here. And there's no reason why maybe we could recommend that the police department put up a poster board in each of those schools of what is legal and what is not.
Yeah. And if you did it on a back-to-school night or a parent-teacher conference night, the parents would see it, because it's one thing for the kids to see it, it's another thing for the parents.
Yeah, and I think most of those back-to-school nights have been held, and so if we get it up in the school on an easel now at the entrance of every school,
Yeah.
that would be a nice recommendation. And I don't know about you, I visit schools, and I visit my own kid's school, and you walk in, you sign in, and you see different things, right?
Yeah.
So it could catch some of those.
And it seems like a very low cost, like, you only have to make the sign once. So.
And I
figure out where
agree.
you can put it.
It also would help with, I'm sorry, I interrupted
No, I'm just,
you. I apologize.
there you go.
It would also help with the objections parents are going to have. Because if you reach out with education for, I don't know, a year, several months first, but it's not, and then now there's an outright ban, and maybe parents aren't gonna call and say, I just bought this thing for my 12-year-old, and how am I supposed to get him to school now?
Mm-hmm.
How can they possibly find a way to school without a motor vehicle?
I thought,
I'm still perplexed, because I really thought it was illegal for these vehicles to be on the road at all, or sidewalks or anything.
yes, Kendall.
So one thing is each community council at the schools, they're in charge of going over the safe routes and having that presented. And each school is supposed to have a safe routes plan on their website. So you could easily talk to each school or the district and get these rules linked to those safe routes through that way. I'm not in complete agreement with moving the band to 15. Only because personally, I have a 14-year-old daughter and she has switched to riding our electric bike. And she goes up around the MTC where there is not a bike lane for her. And then that road merges. And if she were to be, and that sidewalk is a bit wider. And if she were to be pulled over, and even if I were with her, I would still say we're not getting on the road, because the problem is when you are, to me, even it's nerve-wracking riding next to a bike who's on the road, especially if there's not a bike lane for them. So is it better to have them off the road and off the sidewalk when no one's there, and on the road with these vehicles? And I mean, our electric bikes don't go over 20 miles per hour, so she can't even keep with the traffic speed limit and these vehicles that will be zooming past her. My other question or just point is at BYU, I believe they have signs that say you are not allowed to ride during class exchanges. I mean, is there more of a direction that we could go in that way? Like, if people are on the sidewalk, you may not ride, or you must walk, or be under, rather than banning it completely.
But that's an education etiquette thing that we would need, because, I mean, I admitted that I just rode on the sidewalk on my way here. when that pedestrian was coming towards me, I was going very slow. However, I've been on that same exact sidewalk when someone on a bike was going full speed ahead and they did not care that there was someone else coming opposite direction. So once you got rule breakers and rule abiders and polite people and clueless people, and no matter how much effort we put into educating people, there's still going to be people who are clueless or don't care. So there's still going to be conflict.
And this is why I said ban, is because that gives a police officer a very clear boundary. There's no gray area there. There's no, were they going faster than they should have? Was there someone present that shouldn't have been there?
With the motor, was mom there?
Yeah, I mean, there's no gray area.
But I agree with Kendall, if you're trying to be a law-abiding citizen and trying to choose the safest place, you're going to break that rule because it will be, the alternative is not better.
So maybe a modification to that would be, trying to think of how to word this. Basically, if there's somebody, like you said, Kendall, if there's somebody present on the sidewalk, you need to move off the sidewalk. If it is a dangerous situation to get on the road, you need to get off and walk or cut the assist. And this is all for adults personally. And I know I know there's many 14-year-olds that are very mature and able to handle stuff like this. 15 was I was thinking 15 just because that's about the time people are learning how to get their learner's permit and learning the rules of the road and learning how to drive a vehicle safely on the road. Hopefully they're learning that.
What is the state code? I think I remember, David, you telling me that children can ride their bicycles on the sidewalk. This is not assisted with anything, just bicycles on the sidewalk up to 13, is that right? Is that what you told me?
That probably, I don't know. So
Okay.
either that was me and I've completely forgotten, or it might not have been.
Okay. So the only place right now where we prohibit bicycles from riding on the sidewalk is just downtown Center Street and downtown University Avenue because of the density of our pedestrians. So it's a safety thing there. But everywhere else, we see people ride bikes on, but that's not what we're talking about. We're okay with bicycles. What we're not okay with is the motor assist in some way, shape, or form, right? The vehicle assist.
So e-bikes can ride on sidewalks. I'm just trying to think of the law of unintended consequences. If you were to ban micromobility, and all those parents who still need to get their kids shift, potentially, they go out and sell them all or junk them all, and then they all buy e-bikes.
No, because e-bikes still can't ride on sidewalks because they're motorized according to this idea.
That's the question, right?
Yeah, e-bikes would be pedal.
But under current
pedal
law, an
assist,
e-bike
yeah.
is seen as a bicycle.
Right.
Other than I believe there's an age requirement. Which, if the age requirement is 15 for e-bikes anyway, then that problem's solved already.
But that brings us back to nobody's enforcing it, nobody's aware of it. So either way, we're talking about rules that.
Well, and that's why, again, that's why putting a very clear definition around it, police officers then have the discretion. They don't have to cite everybody. They don't have to pull them in and wreck them. They can sit there and go, these are the rules. And then just say, hey, did you know this is the rule change moving forward? And I feel like our police officers in Provo are very good about discerning situations and educating the public versus just going out and going after the public.
Well, I think we need to move on, but
Yeah.
I definitely think that this isn't the perfect solution, but we need to talk about it more, unfortunately.
Absolutely. This is not ready for a recommendation.
Sorry, Beth, it's not your last.
Dang it. I've been pushing for it. That's okay.
Katrice had a good suggestion that maybe we could find out what other cities have done. I presented last year about something I learned at one of the conferences I went to that St. George and the surrounding cities had done. This is as far as signage on their trail system. And I still think that might be one of the best things to do, is just to get a really readable signage system that's consistent throughout the city and, you know, the interchanges with the other cities around us, so that we just educate our riders everywhere we go, that they're, and then if there's a conflict point, if there's a point that gets reported a lot, we can refer to, you guys all know the rules.
Like a ton of them are renting those electric bikes in Orem, right? Like in Alta Canyon,
Uh-huh.
and riding them into Provo and really fast and way faster our trail than 15.
So please, all TMAC members, please email your suggestions of changes into Vern. And then we can continue it
We
the
can have
next
that
time.
discussion next time, yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the discussion today, you guys.
I think we could totally do the stop sign thing.
Yeah, I totally think we need to stop something.
The new member just walked in. We could have them.
I guess it's kind of social services.
And
Chris will.
Wiltsey, IQ.
Yeah, if I can introduce them if you like.
yeah,
That's the
I was
next
gonna
item.
say, the next item on our agenda is the New Jersey Mobile Active Transportation Tour presentation by Chris and,
So Chris Welty is with, co-director of Bike Utah, and a resident of Provo. Mike West is, Lehigh City planner and has done a lot of, things up in Lehigh, including a cycle track on 700 South. And they've amended some ordinances to implement some of the things that we've seen, from a presentation with him and Kim Struthers, when they did their trip, to, where'd you go? I forget. Netherlands. Okay. So, they are here today to co-present on the New Jersey tour, which they invited me to attend. I had other conflicts and could not make it. That's why I've asked them to come back and present to our TMAC. And so I'll turn the time over to those guys.
I was gonna ask if it might be okay to steal a map.
Yeah,
Quick here. Some of them have a bit of quick, maybe. Thank you.
We're not just yelling at you.
Yeah.
Switch it. You bet.
Hey, what is your name?
Kayla.
Okay, yeah, we've emailed a lot, but never met in person.
You're good.
Awesome to meet you. Okay, so a mobile active transportation tour is something we've been doing with WFRC and Mountain Land Association of Governments for maybe a decade now, maybe a little less than a decade. But this year we decided to go to New Jersey, and specifically to Jersey City and Hoboken, because Hoboken hasn't had a traffic fatality in like 7 years.
what?
Yeah, it's crazy. So we were like, okay, what's their like secret sauce? And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the mobile active transportation tours, it's just going out to different cities around the country and looking at what they're doing to make their streets safer. So Mike West with Lehigh City, he comes on these a lot with me. He has a good eye for detail, and so I wanted him to present with me and kind of talk about some of his insights and his perspective. So I'm going to hand it off to you.
First, Hoboken and Jersey City, they're both trying to do, it's called the safe systems approach. That's an approach to road safety, different than what we have seen. A lot of it involves design and the way you structure the system. Sweden's done Vision Zero, Netherlands has done the speed safety to other countries, but a lot of this idea originated actually in Sweden's Vision Zero. But FHWA has since adopted the safe system approach, and they're trying to get states and cities as best they can to try and adopt it. But there's a lot about it to try and understand and know how it's going to be implemented on the roads, and there's no perfect answer with the roads, but the whole idea is keeping risk potential low, and how that goes into that. But first, I just want to point out, this is a bunch of countries around the world. A lot of them are the European Union, some other more first world countries. This is the number of fatalities per 100,000 people in each country. Norway is the lowest at about 1.5. You go to Japan, 2.7, Holland 3.4, or neighbor to the north, 4.7. Russia, 10.6, definitely higher, and I've seen some videos of their roads, which is chaotic sometimes. Shocking that we were higher. Yep, Mexico, again, this is based on reported. I don't know how some of the countries reporting is, but Mexico's 12 and you can't be over. We're at 14.2 in the US. Utah's a little lower, and a lot of that might have to do with the fact that we have less driving under the influence. The structure of the system still has a lot more risk potential, especially than a lot of these countries that have been implementing their policy for a long time. So as you can see, you know, they're not at zero. Obviously, zero would be the ideal goal, and that's what they work towards, but certainly they have way less serious injuries, fatalities.
Are there countries that are higher than the United States?
Yeah,
They're just
yeah.
not-
But like,
you're
you
just
know,
showing what
Libya
they
in
do.
Africa is one of the highest in the world. They have a lot bigger problems on their hands.
And you mentioned DUI. How much is DUI in effect?
Yeah, so a lot of the countries that have the lower rates actually have a lot more drinking culture than Utah especially, but so you can design the system to be safe, then and we'll get into it, but a part of anticipating the types of mistakes people are going to make. So this is kind of there's 5 elements, 6 principles to the safe system approach around the circle. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. Around the circle are the principles. Those establish the 5 elements in the middle. We're going to talk about a few of these. Some of these, you know, at the city, we may not have as much control over, such as, you know, state vehicles, auto manufacturers are building vehicles. The main thing a city can do is vehicles they choose to purchase, they can try and get ones that are safer, they're less likely to kill other people. So that's one thing the city could do. There's a couple of these that are really important to understand. We'll get into a little bit, but like humans make mistakes, humans are vulnerable, responsibility shared, and what that truly means. Ways done to clarify what that means. What safe speeds are, safe roads, and safe road users. So first I want to talk about kind of the vulnerabilities. Our bodies can only handle so much impact in a crash, and you're definitely more vulnerable if you're not a car, when the car's coming at you. So pedestrians, this is approximate, could be plus or minus, depending on the vehicle or the person, but 20 miles per hour, pedestrians about 10% likely to kill. So there's some risk, but it's only much lower. Go to 30 miles per hour, that goes up 4-fold, up to 40%. So it's exponential increase of risk just by going up 30 miles per hour. When you're at 40 miles per hour, you're more likely. So it's really important in understanding how we design our streets and how we access them, context around the street. Well, that's going to factor in. The goal would be the lowest. It may be impossible to completely eliminate risk, but we want to shoot for lower risk. So for vehicles, you know, you have around 10%. These all relate to about a 10% risk of fatality. So a car hitting a car, like a T-bone, 30 miles per hour is about that 10%. You really don't want to go too much higher than that when this kind of conflict exists. The head-on collision, I've seen a couple of different numbers from FHWA. It ranges between 30 and 45. Netherlands example, 7 miles per hour. So that you really don't want to go too much faster than that when you have the possibility of a head-on collision. And fixed objects, you really don't want to go over 30 miles per hour. That's why we have things like clear areas, step along roadways. Going faster than that, then those things should be away from the roadways. People shouldn't have to pay with their lives for making a mistake on the road. So with that being said, humans make mistakes. These are all just oh, here we go. Humans make mistakes. Just on my commute all the time, I see the kinds of mistakes people are making on the freeway. Well, sorry guys, didn't see you there. Been in intersections before. Oh, let's turn right on red, just roll on through. And every once in a while, you can get a car up on the next path.
Oh my gosh.
So the reality is people make mistakes. Now the car on the path should be there, but they were going slower, so that's as dangerous as the guy running the red light at 35 miles per hour. So we have to anticipate the fact that people will make mistakes. I always hear, you know, well, humans are rational, we're going to set speed limits to what the rational person's going to drive, but I argue that humans are emotional and they don't really understand the true dangers that are there, so we need to understand how built environment.
The notion that humans are rational goes against all evidence.
Yeah.
You can close that.
I'll close this one out and then, oh, there we go. Then, when you're looking at mistakes, design should be forgiving of mistakes. People, we know people are gonna make mistakes. Our mistakes shouldn't lead to people dying. We should consider that mistakes are both inadvertent, but also on purpose. People do things on purpose that are dumb, and we should try and look at the system and how to anticipate that. This is an example. I live in Daybreak now and have a bit more traffic calling up there than other parts of Utah. I like that it's kind of systematic throughout the community, not just spots.
There's a lot of go bumps there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
A lot of them.
all over the place. There's more in the new areas than even mine. But I'm coming off a raised crossing here, driving along, taking kids home in the minivan, and he's along, and well, what happens? You got the puppy running out and the kid running across. So you have to anticipate these things may happen, especially within a neighborhood context like this. So key here is I was going slow enough that I could quickly stop. So if I was going 30 miles per hour there, I don't think that doggy would be happy running. So the key is in complex situations, you want slow speed design forgiveness, which means your drivers driving slow enough that when people mistakes or dogs, we're not killing them in the process. We want them slow enough to stop and react. Now there's also high speed design forgiveness, which I have an example coming. I need to push right on the keyboard, maybe. There we go. This is a complex situation where someone's making a mistake, but you can see.
Big flight in American Form.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's lining up for their chicken sandwich here, but didn't have this kind of stuff happen trying to get chicken. You got a guy on a skateboard right there. The car doesn't see him. Close call, but then the driver almost gets hit, but you got traffic going 40 plus miles per hour. Not only was that person on skateboard at risk because they have this huge wide crossing, you have, this is what we call a strode. You shouldn't have a bunch of accesses on a major arterial like that. Obviously, a lot of arterials are existing that way. We're trying the best of cities to reduce the number of conflicts. So that's an example of complexity, but with high speed, and what you need is slow speed design forgiveness when you have these kinds. And I wasn't expecting to catch that on my drone footage there. I just happened to see it when I got back to my desk. I was just like, look at this horrible drive-through line backing out. Let's see what I was doing. And saw that when I was back to the office, like, wow, I didn't even notice that when I was down on the ground.
I was literally just thinking, tell him first.
Yeah, I actually felt for like 20 minutes there. And that just happened.
Makes you wonder how often things are happening there.
Yeah,
Apparently it's
all over the
every
place.
20 minutes.
Yeah. Sorry, you might. The video is full screen. So what happens, stuff like this, is kind of getting into that shared responsibility, I was still in Vegas, but this is an article, man dies by being hit by a car while crossing the street, not in a crosswalk. So what happens here, all the comments like, well, it's not that hard to use the crosswalk. If you saved your life, you would have gone down the crosswalk, but design of the roadway and the function might ignore the context around it. So all the time, I was at a baseball game at the stadium in Daybreak there, and we see this thing coming up. Drive good, everybody. Drive good. It's a shared responsibility. We're all looking after. We all have to do our part to make sure it's safe. Obviously, all of us want to try better to drive safer, but we all make mistakes. But not that way we shouldn't have education as part of our outreach, but what we need is to provide a system that understands that humans make mistakes, and shared responsibility that any of us that are involved with structuring the system need to understand the principles and how to keep that risk potential low. Obviously, we all want to try and follow the rules the best we can. There's those who don't care to follow the rules, so we need a system to anticipate that, and road design, context. Now here's an example, large roadway, our favorite. We see these everywhere. It's up in West Valley City. There's actually a BRT line right there, which invites a lot of people to actually walk to this area. West Valley City, Utah, 3500 south, you got a lot of traffic, high speed. You can see there's all kinds of destinations along this stretch of roadway. Got housing, a lot of businesses. There's a lot of demand to get access to these places, but as I'm walking down the sidewalk, you see the burrito place right across the street there. Who wouldn't want to go get a burrito? Just begging for us to go over there, but in order to get there, you got to walk a quarter mile down the street and then a quarter mile back, but it's just right across the street from where you're at. The natural human instinct is to go directly there. So what happens? Across the roadway. When you put in these high-speed roadways, in these complex kind of contexts, and you're inviting, you're basically accepting a high level of risk, and you're ignoring the context and the typical human. So there's a lot of different ways you can try and approach that situation. There's no one right answer, but safety, what the safe system approach argues, should be number one. Doesn't mean you have to forget about other priorities of a city or transportation system, but that should be the number one consideration. So if that's the case, and that's the time that's there. But here's an example of high-speed forgiveness. So like we saw that video earlier, the cars that almost hit each other, but there was a little bit of space to maneuver, and that's by design and appropriate on a freeway like this. So you have this design forgiveness, wide lanes and shoulders. If you make a mistake, you're not going to hit an object. When you apply that same thing to a local street context, that's when you start encouraging higher speeds that are appropriate for the context, and also you're wasting space that can be used for other purposes. Now I want to look at safe users. You know, it's the belief of Vision Zero safe system that everybody, mobility is a basic human right. Driving is one type of mobility that's actually more of a, what is that? Privilege? Privilege, yes. Driving is a privilege, not by right. You have to get a driver's license, all these things. Not everybody can drive. It requires physical ability, speed, operate the vehicle. Driving is a mode of transportation. We should have it, but it's a privilege. So we need to make sure that all modes are there, especially walking is probably the primary mode that we should be looking at, than biking, transit driving. But mobility is a basic human right, and we should make sure that all modes of travel are safe. This is just an example. This is my commute to work in the morning to the front of our station, South Jordan. This bike lane is completely exposed to high-speed traffic. You got parked cars that can come out and cross that bike lane anytime. Getting squeezed here. A lot of times I actually do ride my bike on the sidewalk there, just don't want to deal with it. Sometimes I go through dangerous situations to get on film and show people. Basically, this does not ensure safe mobility for all modes. So, great to have the space there, but there's the biking or in those kinds of modes, there's a dare you to ride, which is just riding the travel lane. There's no bike lane. This is you're able to ride. There is a space for you, but it is dangerous and uncomfortable. And then there's an encouraged to ride, which is getting more into the trail systems or the protected style bike. Now, that same kind of design language is what we see so often. How do we take that design language and put it in something that's safer for all? So, just a little sketch model I drew. Well, this is what we see commonly, but maybe this is, not that this is the only way to do it, but maybe this is more in line with trying to make it safe, and it actually uses less material. So from a brand new build standpoint, for city builds, less asphalt to maintain the long term. This one has no point. Hear that?
Totally do.
Oh, you're good. How we're doing. So then we ask ourselves, what are our values as a city, as citizens? You know, do we value high-speed mobility at the cost of safety? Do people really value these big giant freeways? Is what they really prioritize, or is it just the ability to have mobility without a lot of congestion and issues along the way? But how do those kinds of decisions interact or conflict with some of our other values? Do we want a good neighborhood, a place where kids can have independence and happiness, encouraging physical activity because it's so good for physical and mental health and community? This is an example of Lehigh, although we have some people who are.
700 south of Lehigh, and you guys just implemented that when, was it late, last year?
Yeah, a year now. You can see all the children going home from school. This is, you know, we feel it's a priority in the community to provide children safer and more meaningful places to school. This is one of our most heavily walked and biked school there.
I was just gonna ask how you protect the pedestrians in that section that is across the bike lane, and as I spotted it,
Oh, yeah.
we zipped around the corner and almost hit the
Oh,
crosswalk
yeah.
guard.
I did speed up the footage, so they're actually going a lot slower.
Okay.
I
Shut up, Will.
don't wanna make you guys sit for like a minute and a half to watch it. Yeah, where you know, with typical bikes, stuff like that, there are conflicts between bikes, pedestrians and things, so that's a little bit of an elevated risk potential, but the risk potential of vehicles is much higher. Even at 5 miles per hour, there's so much. One thing you do notice here is we have a typical bike lane kind of in the gutter right there. Children going northbound, more often or not, choose sidewalk. Children with the bikeway are choosing the bikeway. So that's where you understand the way things are designed. When you have a facility that encourages use, children have space and they spread out. People with e-bikes and stuff get on there. People's comments are, well, everybody should just ride on the sidewalk and use this road space for cars. People feel that see what they think is important, but then there's safety issues with piling too many people on the sidewalk. So having the space for people is important to have to.
I didn't notice any micromobility. I mean, I'm being serious, like,
Oh, yeah.
all the
All pedal
bicycles.
bikes.
So
Yeah.
has that not hit Lehigh as much as it's hit Provo, or?
We get some of that, like the Surons. We see it more often on like our Murdoch Canal Trail, but in this area, we have a count cam that we traffic counts and speed counts, but also can use it as a camera to see how people are behaving in these things. So we put it out for a couple of weeks in some of these spots. It hasn't been a huge issue in this particular spot. In fact, sometimes the Suron riders just go in the street.
The individual schools also can set what they permit to be available to park at their school. So. Okay, we do need to kind of
Yeah,
figure it
sorry.
out, guys.
Yeah, so, different solutions for different contexts. Hoboken, they're more, pedestrian focused, so they did what's called daylighting, traffic calming. So, show you really quick, and Jersey City, they focused more on creating a robust bike network. So like I was saying, Hoboken has gone over 7 years without a pedestrian fatality, with no recorded traffic deaths occurring since January 2018. Yeah, and so something interesting about Hoboken is it's actually like a party town. And so, like we were talking about earlier, like even though you might assume in a place like that, there would be a lot of like drunkards walking around, you can still create a system that is safe for people making mistakes.
What's the population?
It's super, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like 40,000 something, but it's very, very dense. So what is daylighting really quick? Let's say you're approaching an intersection, there's a car parked right here. You can't actually see that there is a pedestrian behind that car. So you might just go really quick across that and hit that pedestrian. So ways that we can daylight intersections is creating spaces where cars cannot park so that visually you can see those folks. Yeah, so this is an example of what we're talking about. So like right here, it's not daylighted, so you can't actually see. So you have two different potential conflict points, people walking across the street, across your travel path, or people crossing where you're about to turn, like you're going to do a right-hand turn. So in this instance, they can't see the person doing either of those things. But in this case, you could see because they've daylighted that corner of the intersection.
Stay on that one just for a minute, Chris. So our law is 20 feet, can't park within a crosswalk within 20 feet of the crosswalk at an intersection. If it has a stop sign, that increases to 30 feet, or a yield sign increases to 30 feet. However, a mid-block crosswalk doesn't have any minimum setback. You can park right next to it. This is where daylight comes in. So we've implemented it on Timpanogos Timpanogos Elementary School, and we're getting ready to do one on Tentview Drive as well.
Really good insight, thanks.
Part of it is doing self-enforcing designs, because even if it's a rule, people, if it's just open curve, they may just park right up to it anyway.
Absolutely. So we had signs at the other one. We had non-compliance with those signs of people dropping off and picking up their kids. And when are they doing that? At the busiest time when the crosswalk's being utilized, right? So because we had non-compliance, we went out and put up delineators, and that stopped that like that.
Yeah, yeah, so this is exactly what Vern is talking about, putting up these flexible delineators that enforce that, rule. Over here, here's another example, you know, I think this is maybe applicable in Provo, because when we had scooters everywhere, people were getting mad about them being parked in the street. What if we actually used scooter parking as a way of enforcing daylighting? It's kind of a cool idea. In Hoboken, they also are dealing with wide streets, but when they redevelop, they could do anything, but they choose to do narrow streets because basically the concept is the more you make people worried about scratching their cars, the slower they're going to drive. So you narrow up the street and you raise up the street, and each of those can cause scratching to your car if you're not careful. So, and I'm saying that sort of jokingly. I don't want people to scratch their cars because, you know, excuse, but yeah, it's the fear of scratching your car. So that's what they do in a lot of instances, and so they're narrowing up their streets. There's another example where they've narrowed up the street using these flexible delineators. And then in Jersey City, they're doing low-cost infrastructure in a lot of cases. So they've built out a pretty robust protected bike network. These are just like Jersey barriers. So it's not the most aesthetically pleasing, so it doesn't look as nice as some of the stuff Mike was showing us, but gets the job done. This is another great example you were talking about. There's no parking. Well, what if we turned parking into an asset and use it as the protection to separate bikes from the street? That's like a very cheap way because all you're using is paint. It maybe takes a little bit of education, but it's a very cheap way. And it also allows Jersey City to test out ideas and see what the problems are. So I'm sure all of us, we've interacted with some sort of street design and been like, why did they do this? It's hard to anticipate things. It really is hard. Doing low-cost implementation first can be a great asset.
This is what we do with our bikeway in Lehigh. We used to post up. At some point, it'd be nice to make that permanent, but we're learning a lot from it. Data.
And I think since Vern has come on, I've seen a lot of that sort of perspective, and like you're doing some of these low-cost treatments, and I really like that. I think that's really wise for the city, and that Vern and some of your staff have been, you know, leading the way on that. So I think that's really cool.
We appreciate the examples. We've every time I go to APA, Mike seems to be presenting. Good to have you. I hope to build up enough here in Provo where we can present on Provo, right? So we get some of those implemented, and we'll join up and participate that way. Questions for Chris and Mike?
I just had a question about Hoboken and Jersey City. Did you feel like it was like intentional from the start that they were doing these things, and that's why their numbers are down? Or do you think some of it is like circumstantial, that there's a lot of on-street parking and a lot of narrow streets anyway, and so it just kind of defaulted to a good situation?
I think
Or that it's so crowded and the traffic's going so slow that they don't have to do the traffic calming
No, I
measures?
think that's a really good question. So like, I think that's why I showed like that example in Hoboken of the like really wide street, like that they are dealing with that. And I actually went back after the trip because I was interested about the same question and looked at Google Maps and, you know, scrolled it back. You can go back pretty far, and there was like a lot of industrial. So it was just like very open roads. And as they redeveloped, they were like very intentional. So they had like traditional models of street design with like narrow streets as like maybe a reference point, but they made the decision as they redeveloped to continue that. And so it like reinforced that. In the case of Jersey City, for sure they're intentional, because Jersey City is like, Hoboken is very nice. It's like a very nice community. Jersey City is very like rough around the edges.
Yeah.
And so and it's much larger than Hoboken, so they have to build out this infrastructure. That's why they're doing kind of things. And they're narrowing up their streets with like Jersey barriers and things like that.
They're also they're like very culturally used to a commuter environment, and so like I don't think people here think about that as much. They think about getting in my car and going, whereas Jersey City and Hoboken are used to like funneling people to the pass station and how do we get them there safely, sort of a thing, so,
And if I was,
yeah.
if I was going to choose where I wanted to ride my bike or walk, I'd probably choose Hoboken over Jersey City. Jersey City still has like a ton of cars, and a lot of them are going very quick, but they're getting better, whereas Hoboken, I think they're a bit ahead of the curve and they have less to work.
Hoboken's about 57,000 people according to this for 2023. So to kind of give you context, was there a lot of one-way streets? I noticed one of those pictures was one-way streets, and they tend to use those back east more, right? Okay.
I think in one-way streets are a cool idea. It's a narrow street. I think in Salt Lake, it sort of cuts off one side of the street and makes it difficult to get across.
In Daybreak, where I live, the streets are about as narrow as the Hoboken ones, but they're two-way, and they call them two-way yield. Actually, only 16 feet to park cars, which I did find can pass. But it makes people stop and yield for each other to pass, so it really keeps speed down. So Daybreak's a local example.
We actually have one in Provo, the street I live on, like the East Park neighborhood. I think it's the only neighborhood in the city that has like, what you're talking about. But it's 23 feet wide, parking on both sides, and I've lived there for 8 years now, and you just yield. It works really well. Yeah. And like my kids, I'm not scared of them playing out in the street or in our front yard. Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay.
I think we just have a couple of updates. First one from an engineering perspective is that, I don't know if I told you last time, the 8th East Bikeway is now completely signed and up and running, all the way from the Maverick on State Street, all the way up to the BYU campus. So right there, it's signed in both directions and it looks very nice. Bicyclists, typically they would come up State Street and they would go right on 7th East, right? The other day I saw a bicyclist make that turn, go over to the 8th East Bikeway and up that, and I was so happy to keep them safe on a street that is low volume, low speed, and keep them off.
So it's signed, the signage points them to turn right at the Maverick and then go up by the ball diamond?
Yeah. So it takes you up 850, and then once you get up to Center Street, it jogs you back over to 8 through Veterans Memorial Park and all the way up to campus. You go through a little condo row there.
Yeah, I take that all the time to campus, so I just have never gone to Beatles back center.
So the signs are up on that, and then we just implemented kind of a temporary pilot project for traffic calming. We implemented a chicane up here on Navajo Drive. Just got this done the other day. What we had in this situation was people taking the curb too fast, and in the wintertime they might wind up, you can see the rocks in front of that fence over there. They might end up in there, or they might end up in the house just to the south here a little bit and wind up in the front yard. So we had some concerns from residents, and I went out and did a speed study and looked at this, and we said, let's do this. The neighbors were totally supportive. It's temporary, and we'll run it for a year, and we'll see what it does. We have 2 other places where we're already looking at this. As soon as you do one of these, the other neighborhoods say, hey, I want one of those,
So
right?
you're just forcing the road to be narrower?
Yep, just
Is it a choker or is it a chicane? Is it not shoving you one?
Yeah, it's really not pushing you off to a different lane of travel. So choker is probably the better description of it. But it's working, and people have already liked it. And I haven't yet received a complaint. I know I will, but right now people are happy with it.
Did you approach the neighbors that it was going to be right in front of their house?
Yes, I did.
They were okay with it, or?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's what makes it really easy. So I have this plan for 2950 North that connects Canyon and Tentview. It's a very busy cut-through street. And as soon as we were about ready to implement it, someone bought the property that we're going to implement and built a new house, or in the process of building a new house, so we couldn't put it there because we didn't have their permission any longer. Not that we need permission, but I like to build consensus, right? So we go out there and, now we've moved it a little bit further to the, west, and we're hoping that will work on 2950 as well. But we want to experiment with these, want to get people to slow down. I wanted to do a little bit more with this, but snow plowing and understanding that our snow plows are 14 feet wide and, they don't want to scrape up things I put on the pavement, so it's kind of a compromise here.
I was gonna ask, have you had any delineators up through a winter in either Lehigh or Provo?
Yes.
How snowplow drivers really good to leave them alone, or do you get to replace it?
Well, up by you, up on Grandview Hill, we did the delineations on that. We had 2 taken out by snowplow drivers, we just put them back. Not a big problem. Hey, they're inexpensive, and most of the time are reusable. We just put them back.
Our bikeway only gone through one winter so far, but are they hurt and then plows to come out? Yeah. They're masks.
And I think this is kind of the stuff that I'm talking about that Vern's been pioneering in the state. I think it's really smart, like fiscally smart, and also just from like a engineering perspective, I think it's.
So we tried to implement something, looking at both Lehigh's and Provo's on a particular street where the residents were quite concerned about speed. They essentially got shot down because they did not want it in front of their house.
Right.
Because then it would take away their parking.
That's exactly
And
what
it doesn't look nice. That was the concern that so we're still not scratching our heads saying, so what is more important to you, lower speeds? Yeah, but not in front of my place. So it's an interesting battle.
I think this looks nice too, at least from my perspective. What's interesting is the homeowner on the right where you see all the grass, she has a home occupation. So she runs her business out of her home, and she was totally cool with us taking up one of those parking spots, even though she has more parking there, but she was totally fine. She said, this is the good that outweighs this parking spot, right? And so she was totally excited to have that. She put it in front of my house, please.
We've done a couple of these installations in other parts of Lehigh on a temporary basis. Generally, it's positive. There's a couple of people on some.
I was actually surprised after all the stink they went through to get to city council, and then we proposed it, they're like, well, that's gonna look terrible. Like, what did you want? Well, we want curbing,
Is that it?
like stamped concrete. I'm like, we don't want to spend that kind of money to see if it doesn't work. We tried to throw the test out.
Thank you guys so much for coming. This will adjourn TMAC for today, and hope we all can come back next.
To discuss micromobility.
Yeah.
For the last time. And then the last time.